Have you ever noticed how some people can walk into a room, say one thing, and suddenly everyone's hanging on their every word? Meanwhile, others, no matter how hard they try, just get ignored, talked over, or dismissed. Here's the kicker. It's not about being the loudest, smartest, or most experienced. It's about how you speak. In this video, I'm spilling the tea on ways to speak so people can't help but respect you. Some of these will make you nod, others might make you squirm, but I promise they'll all change the way people see you. Ready to level up your voice? Let's go. 1. Ditch the "I'm sorry" habit. Okay, let's talk about the 2 words that are ruining your life. I'm sorry. Yeah, I said it. Stop apologizing for every little thing. It's not cute, it's not polite, and it's definitely not helping anyone respect you. Controversial? Sure. But let's break this down. When you apologize unnecessarily, you're not being polite. You're undermining yourself. It's like you're telling the world, hey, don't take me seriously. I'm already assuming I'm wrong. You're practically handing people permission to walk all over you. Picture this. You walk into a room and say, sorry, I'm late, even though you're only 2 minutes behind because traffic was a nightmare. Now you've framed yourself as the problem when, honestly, life just happened. Or how about this classic? Someone bumps into you and you blurt out, oh, sorry. What are you sorry for? Being physically present. Let me tell you about the time I realized I had a full-blown sorry addiction. I was in a meeting and someone interrupted me, and guess what I said? Oh, sorry, go ahead. Excuse me? Why was I apologizing for being interrupted? That was my turning point. So I started catching myself. Every time I was about to say, I'm sorry, I stopped and asked myself, do I actually owe anyone an apology, or am I just trying to soften the moment? Spoiler alert, 90% of the time there was no reason to apologize. Apologizing when it's unnecessary isn't just a habit, it's a mindset. It's like you're apologizing for existing, for taking up space, for being human. And if you keep doing it, guess what? People will start to believe you. They'll see you as someone who's always in the wrong, someone who doesn't value themselves enough to stand tall. But here's the truth. You have every right to take up space, to have opinions, to make mistakes. Respect doesn't come from saying, I'm sorry. It comes from owning your presence and your imperfections. So, what do you say instead? Let's rewrite the script. Instead of, sorry I'm late, try, thank you for waiting. Instead of, sorry for bothering you, say, do you have a moment? Instead of, sorry, can I add something? Go with, I'd like to add something. Boom. Now you're confident and respectful without apologizing for your existence. The next time you're about to say, I'm sorry, pause. Ask yourself, do I actually need to apologize, or am I just trying to make myself smaller? Respect starts with how you respect yourself. Ditch the unnecessary sorries, and you'll be amazed at how people start to see and hear you differently. 2. Set boundaries and stick to them. Let's cut through the fluff. If you're not setting boundaries, you're not being selfless. You're being spineless. Yeah, I said it. And before you get mad at me, think about it. How many times have you said yes to something you didn't want to do, just to keep the peace? How often have you let someone overstep because you didn't want to seem difficult? Let's talk about why boundaries are not just nice to have. They're a requirement for respect. Here's the deal. Boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about teaching people how to engage with you respectfully. Think of them as the rules of your personal game. No boundaries, no rules, and if there are no rules, people will play however they want. Spoiler alert, that usually doesn't end well for you. Let me make it simple. When you don't set boundaries, you're basically saying, your comfort is more important than my sanity. Sound familiar? That's why you're stuck answering texts at 2 a.m. or working late because someone forgot to finish their part of the project. Here's where it gets controversial. When you start setting boundaries, people are going to get mad. Why? Because they've gotten used to you bending over backward for them. Trust me, I've been there. One time, I told a close friend I couldn't help them move because I had other plans. They hit me with the guilt trip. Wow, I thought you were someone I could count on. And for a second, I almost caved. But then I realized this isn't about me being a bad friend. It's about them not respecting my time. So, I stuck to my boundary. Guess what? They found someone else to help, and we're still friends. People will adjust, but only if you hold the line. I'll never forget the day I realized my lack of boundaries was costing me my peace. I had this coworker who always dumped last-minute tasks on me. At first I'd say, sure, no problem, because I wanted to seem helpful, but then I noticed a pattern. Every time I bailed them out, they'd do it again. One night, as I was staying late to fix their mistakes, I had an epiphany. I thought, why am I prioritizing their lack of organization over my own life? So the next time they tried it, I said, I can't help with that right now. You'll need to figure it out. Did they pout? Sure. Did they figure it out? Absolutely. And I went home on time for once. Here's the truth. Boundaries aren't about being mean. They're about showing people, and yourself, that your time, energy, and well-being matter. If you don't value your limits, no one else will. But here's the other side of it. Boundaries aren't just for the people who respect you. They're for the people who don't. Setting boundaries helps you filter out those who aren't willing to treat you with dignity. And that's not selfish, that's self-preservation. Here's a tip. Don't over-explain. If you can't do something, a simple, I'm not available for that, is enough. No excuses, no apologies. And here's the key. Stick to it. Because if you cave, you're teaching people that your boundaries are negotiable. Also, practice saying no to small things. It's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Start with something low stakes, like turning down an invitation you're not excited about. Once you see that the world doesn't end, saying no gets easier. Look, setting boundaries isn't easy. It's uncomfortable, and it's going to ruffle some feathers. But the alternative, living a life where everyone else's needs come before your own. And let me tell you from experience, that's a fast track to burnout and resentment. So, start small. Define what you need, communicate it clearly, and most importantly, stick to it. Because the only people who get upset about your boundaries are the ones who benefit from you having none. And honestly, good riddance. Set the boundary. Trust me, it's worth it. 3. Master the art of pausing. You felt that, didn't you? That little bit of tension when I paused? That's the power of silence, my friend. It makes people pay attention. But here's the catch. Most people are so uncomfortable with silence that they'll do anything to fill it. They talk too much, rush their points, and end up sounding like they're trying to sell you something instead of simply speaking their truth. But here's the controversial reality. The pause isn't empty, it's where your power lives. We live in a culture where speed is everything. Fast talkers are seen as confident, quick thinkers. But here's the thing. Fast doesn't always mean effective. When you speak quickly without pauses, your words can feel like background noise, something people hear but don't really listen to. But a pause, that forces people to tune in. It creates anticipation. It's like music. Imagine a song that's just non-stop beats with no breaks or changes. It's overwhelming, right? A pause in music creates rhythm, and a pause in speech does the same. It's not about saying less. It's about making every word count. I wasn't always a fan of pausing. In fact, I was the worst at it. Back in the day, I thought I needed to prove myself with an endless stream of words, meetings, conversations, even dates. I was constantly filling the air, thinking silence would make me look unsure. And honestly, it didn't make me look smart or confident. It made me exhausting. One time I was pitching an idea at work. I was so caught up in explaining every detail that I didn't realize people had checked out halfway through. Afterward, my manager pulled me aside and said, "You've got great ideas, but you don't give people time to process them." Ouch, right? That was my wake-up call. I realized I was doing all the work for my audience instead of trusting them to catch on. When I started practicing pauses, it felt weird at first, like really weird. I'd say something, stop to let it land, and immediately want to jump in and explain myself. But over time, I noticed something amazing. People started paying more attention. Instead of zoning out, they were leaning in. They weren't just hearing me, they were listening. Here's the moment that really solidified it for me. I was giving a presentation, and I intentionally slowed down and added pauses after key points. Afterward, someone came up to me and said, "That was so impactful, I felt like every word mattered." That's when I knew I was onto something. It wasn't just about what I said, it was about how I said it. Here's the deeper lesson. Pausing isn't just about speaking, it's about presence. It's about being so secure in what you're saying that you don't feel the need to fill every moment with noise. A pause says, "I trust my words to speak for themselves." It's a kind of confidence that's rare, and that's exactly why it commands respect. But it's not just about confidence. Pausing teaches us patience. It forces us to slow down and let things sink in. And let's be honest, in a world that's always rushing, there's something powerful about someone who's willing to take their time. It shows they value their words and yours. Now, let me address the critics, because I know you're out there. You're probably thinking, if I pause, people will think I'm lost or unsure. Let me flip that for you. Pausing doesn't make you look unsure. It makes you look deliberate. It tells people, I'm thinking, I'm intentional, and I'm not afraid of a little silence. And if someone mistakes that for hesitation, that's their problem, not yours. The art of pausing isn't just about speech. It's about life. It's about knowing when to slow down, when to let things breathe, and when to let the silence speak louder than words. So the next time you're tempted to fill the gaps with chatter, resist. Trust the pause. Lean into the discomfort. Because when you master the pause, you don't just earn respect. You own the room. And honestly, that's the kind of power you deserve. See what I did there? 4. Use humor without turning into a clown. Humor is like hot sauce. Used right, it elevates everything. Used wrong, it ruins the whole dish. And let me tell you, nothing makes people lose respect for you faster than when you cross the line from being funny to being a clown. I know that sounds harsh, but hey, someone's got to say it. So, let's break it down. How do you use humor to win respect instead of losing it? First, let's address the obvious. Humor is a fantastic tool. It breaks tension, builds connections, and can even make you look smarter. Yeah, studies back that up. But here's the controversial part. If you're not careful, humor can backfire hard. When you rely too much on jokes, especially self-deprecating ones, or if you're constantly playing the fool, people start seeing you as, well, a fool. And trust me, nobody respects a punchline that doesn't know when to quit. Here's where it gets real. I used to be that guy, the one who always had a joke ready, even when the moment didn't call for it. I thought I was being charming, but in reality, I was undermining myself. I'll never forget this one time in a meeting. I cracked a joke about my own workload, something like, "Oh, I'm just here to make spreadsheets look pretty." Everyone laughed, but afterward, my manager pulled me aside and said, "You're too good at what you do to downplay yourself like that." That hit me. I realized that while humor was getting me attention, it wasn't always the kind of attention I wanted. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you need to turn into some ultra-serious robot. Humor is an incredible way to build rapport and lighten the mood. But here's the key. It has to serve a purpose. Are you using humor to connect with people, or are you using it to deflect, distract, or beg for approval? For example, self-deprecating humor can be great, in moderation. It shows humility and relatability. But if you're constantly the butt of your own jokes, people might start to believe you. There's a fine line between laughing with people and giving them permission to laugh at you. Here's the deeper message. Humor is about timing, intent, and balance. When used thoughtfully, it's a sign of intelligence and confidence. But when it becomes a crutch, it's a sign of insecurity. And I know because I've been there. There was a time in my life when I used humor to avoid difficult conversations. If someone gave me critical feedback, I'd crack a joke to deflect. If I felt uncomfortable in a serious discussion, I'd turn it into a laugh fest. And you know what happened? People stopped taking me seriously. I had to learn that respect doesn't come from being the funniest person in the room. It comes from knowing when to be serious and when to be light-hearted. The trick is finding that sweet spot. Humor should add to the conversation, not take away from it. It should make people feel connected, not distracted. And most importantly, it should reflect your confidence, not your insecurity. A well-timed joke can show that you're sharp and in control, but a constant barrage of jokes can make you look like you're trying too hard. And let's not forget, humor can be risky. Sarcasm, for example, can either make you look witty or make you look like a jerk. It all depends on how it lands. Dark humor, same deal. Know your audience, and for the love of all things good, read the room. There's nothing more cringeworthy than a joke that bombs because it was tone deaf. At its core, humor is a form of communication. And like any other form of communication, it's a reflection of who you are. Are you using it to build people up or tear them down? To mask your insecurities or to show your confidence? Because here's the truth. Respect isn't about how many people laugh at your jokes. It's about how your humor makes them feel. So the next time you're about to crack a joke, ask yourself, what's my intent? Am I using humor to connect, or am I hiding behind it? Because when you strike that balance, when you use humor with purpose and confidence, you're not just funny, you're unforgettable. And hey, if all else fails, just remember, dad jokes are always a crowd pleaser, unless they're terrible, in which case, maybe rethink your strategy. 5. Drop the gossip. Let's get controversial. Gossip. You know that juicy little tidbit about Karen from accounting, or that thing your friend swore you wouldn't tell anyone? We've all done it, right? But here's the brutal truth. Gossip doesn't make you look interesting. It makes you look untrustworthy. And if you're the one spilling all the tea, guess what? No one's respecting you. They're just entertained until they realize they might be next on your list. Now, don't get me wrong, I get the appeal. Gossip is like social currency. It feels good in the moment, like you're part of some exclusive club. But here's the flip side. Every time you indulge in gossip, you're telling the people around you, I can't be trusted. It's not just about the person you're talking about. It's about you. And if people can't trust you, they can't respect you. Period. I learned this the hard way. Let me tell you about the time I got burned by my own love of gossip. There was this colleague of mine. Let's call him Dave. Dave was always showing up late, and one day I made an offhand comment to someone else about how he probably had an alarm clock that hated him. It was a joke, but it spread like wildfire. Before I knew it, people were adding their own bits to the story. Dave was lazy. Dave didn't care about his job. Dave was this and that. And guess who Dave found out started the whole thing? Mr. The Worst Part? Dave had a perfectly good reason for being late. He was taking care of his sick mom. That moment, it hit me like a ton of bricks. My harmless gossip wasn't harmless at all. It was hurtful and, honestly, a little cruel. Here's the thing about gossip. It's never really about the person you're talking about. It's about you. Why are you sharing that story? Are you trying to feel superior? Trying to be interesting? Because if you're being honest with yourself, most gossip comes from a place of insecurity. It's like saying, hey, don't look at my flaws, look at theirs. But here's the harsh reality. When you gossip, people aren't thinking about the person you're trashing. They're questioning your integrity. And let's talk about the flip side. What happens when you don't gossip? When you're the person who refuses to engage in the drama, people notice. They start to see you as someone who can be trusted, someone who doesn't need to tear others down to feel good about themselves. That's the kind of person people respect. Let me tell you, when I started actively avoiding gossip, it changed everything. Instead of jumping into those, "Oh my God, did you hear about?" conversations, I'd just say something neutral like, "I hope they're doing okay." At first, it felt weird, like I was missing out. But over time, I noticed people started coming to me for advice instead of drama. They saw me as someone who could handle things maturely, not someone who would weaponize their secrets. Here's the deeper lesson. Gossip doesn't just hurt other people, it hurts you. It chips away at your credibility, your relationships, and even your self-respect. When you drop the gossip, you're making a statement. I'm better than this. I don't need to build myself up by tearing someone else down. That's where true respect comes from. And let's be real for a second. When you're known as that person who always has the gossip, you're also known as the person who can't keep their mouth shut. And you know what happens to those people? They don't get promoted. They don't get trusted with secrets. And worst of all, they're usually the ones left out when the real stuff goes down. So, yeah, maybe ditch the gossip train. It's not going anywhere good. At the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be? Someone who spreads negativity and mistrust? Or someone who lifts others up? Gossip feels good in the moment, sure, but respect, that's something that lasts. And respect doesn't come from spilling the tea, it comes from being the person who refuses to pour it. Besides, Karen from accounting, she's probably just living her best life. Leave her alone. 6. Know when to stop talking. All right, here's a spicy truth bomb for you. Most people talk too much. Yeah, I said it. And you know what? It's costing you respect. The uncomfortable reality is this. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. But, oh, the temptation to keep going, to over-explain, to fill every silence. It's real, right? Let's get into it. Why do we do this? Why do we feel the need to keep talking long after we've made our point? Let's be real. It's insecurity. We think if we stop talking, people will assume we're unsure or that we don't know enough. So we keep rambling, hoping to prove how smart, funny, or valuable we are. Newsflash. Over-talking does the opposite. Instead of making you look impressive, it makes you look unsure and, dare I say it, a little desperate. Let me tell you about the time I learned this the hard way. I was pitching an idea to a client, and I thought I absolutely nailed it. But instead of stopping and letting them digest my brilliant point, I just kept going. I rephrased my idea, added unnecessary details, and even tried to anticipate their questions before they could ask. By the end, they weren't nodding. They were looking confused. After the meeting, my boss pulled me aside and said, You had them in the first 30 seconds, but then you lost them. You need to learn when to stop talking. That hit me like a ton of bricks. I realized I wasn't giving people the space to process what I was saying. I was smothering my own message. And here's the controversial part. Sometimes, the more you talk, the less people listen. It's like pouring water into a glass that's already full. It overflows, and none of it sticks. Silence, on the other hand, silence commands attention. It gives your words weight. When you stop talking, you create space for others to think, to respond, to engage. That's where respect grows. Look, I know it's hard. Silence can feel awkward. You say something and instead of a quick reaction, there's a pause and your brain starts screaming, say something else, fill the gap. But here's the thing, that pause isn't your enemy, it's your ally. It's in those moments of silence that people process your words and decide to take them seriously. Here's the deeper truth. Knowing when to stop talking isn't just about communication, it's about confidence. It's about